Joe Marino of the Locked On Bills podcast and Locked On NFL Scouting podcast joining us on the Western Hotline. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well.
Happy start of the league year, even though an awful lot happened in the last 2 days.
Right. It's so weird, right? I mean, you said it right there. It's agreed to terms. Everything is agreed to terms, and you wonder who's going to be the Anthony Barr, who's going to be the J.D. McKissick, right? But for the most part, I think so much of the movement has already happened. So it's the unceremonious start of the league year today at 4.
And let's just go ahead and assume the Bills' agreements are going to, in fact, get signed to paper. Let's start with the most recent one, Joey Bosa. The Bills go $12 million on Joey Bosa for 1 year to try and get help off the edge. How do you like the player, the gamble, the move, Joe?
Well, it's certainly a buyer beware contract. You know, he's played in only 28 of 51 possible games over the last 3 seasons. I think the good news there is it's went from 5 to 9 to 14 over the last 3 years. So at least it's trending in a good direction, but it's been a lot of different injuries. You know, it's not been any one thing. It's been a core muscle, a foot, some concussions. So obviously the big thing is staying healthy. And if he is healthy, I mean, Joey Bosa is an A-list defensive end in the NFL. And so that's what it comes down to. As the Bills went through their process, probably thinking about trading for Myles Garrett, and that didn't happen. And, you know, some of the big ticket edge rushers signed with other teams. The options were dwindling, but the need didn't go away for the Bills. And probably evaluating their options and thinking this was probably their best chance to get the impact that they need from the defensive end position. And so if he could stay healthy, that's huge. Obviously, I think the good news is that through the injuries, when he's been on the field, he's been the impactful player that he's always been. And I hope that the Bills' rotation can certainly help get the most out of Bosa. And it's a big year for him. I mean, this is his age 30 season. He turns 30 in July. And if he's healthy and does the thing he's supposed to do, he's going to get a big old paycheck next offseason. So hopefully the Bills can be the beneficiaries of a really important season for Joey Bosa.
Was last year, too, one of those years for you where he still looked like he could produce? It was the first year of his career where he would have at least been on pace for double-digit sacks. You got to do it by pace with him. But that's just sacks. I mean, a lot of the other numbers pointed to he was still pretty productive.
Yeah, actually, of course, this news comes through last night at like 9:30, and I'm a go-to-sleep by 9 guy. I'm sure you guys, morning radio guys, I'm sure that's your goals as well. But so I crawl out of bed and just watch an hour of tape to get myself familiar with where he's at. And, you know, I don't think I'm watching vintage Bosa, you know, Ohio State into those first 5 years where he, you know, was terrific. But still a very technical player, a high motor player, physical, a lot of functional strength that you can see. And what's interesting is, you know, he's played in odd front defenses as well, kind of a 3-4 outside linebacker type player. So it's going to be a little bit of a different world for him in Buffalo schematically, but, you know, certainly the chance to get up the field and be part of this mix. I certainly still saw a very, very capable player, even though maybe I wouldn't say that it's the same level of dynamic athlete that you saw, you know, 5-6 years ago.
When it comes to the position overall, the group, do you feel like edge has now, with the extension for Rousseau and Bosa added to the mix here, I mean, he's kind of swapped in for Vaughn. Do you still want a young one added early, or is it just, you know, it's pushed down the chart a little bit in terms of the positions they should probably attack at the top of the draft?
Well, I'd certainly add Michael Hoecht to that list as well of options off the edge. So I think with Bosa, Hoecht, Epinesa, Rousseau, Solomon as your young player, you feel pretty good about that. Now, that doesn't preclude me from an early draft pick at the position. You know, certainly a good year for edge rushers, and if there's one that the Bills like and, you know, can be a fit and really be a player that can be part of the mix to take on a big role in 26, assuming Bosa's the player that he's signed to become, then you would certainly do that. But I certainly find myself more concerned about cornerback and defensive tackle as the primary needs left on the table. So I think the Bills have done a good job of improving that position. It's maybe not exactly the way I thought it would look, but the Bills are better when it comes to their defensive end group today than they were at the end of the season.
Specifically on Hoecht, it's tough to figure out how it would look because he's listed as everything from defensive tackle to slot corner, whatever, slot defender. What do you make of this player?
Man, he's a lot of fun to watch. I just did a film piece that I shared on social media and breaking down his clips, and he's such a unique player, and I'm very curious to see what the Bills do with him because he's, like you said, lining up as a 3-4 rush outside linebacker. He's playing stack linebacker, reading run plays and getting downhill and flowing laterally to the football, sometimes dropping into coverage and, playing out in the slot. I mean, just a really unique guy. Comes into the NFL as a undrafted free agent out of Brown. That's a 310-pound defensive tackle. Now he's like 267, and you can see a really dynamic athlete. And so I don't think we should be looking at him as the difference in the defense, but as a really unique piece that can be deployed in a bunch of different ways, that can diversify the fronts, that's athletic and physical. And, he plays with that type of strain that you'd expect from a guy that has had a uphill battle to get to where he is in the NFL. I think he's going to win over the fan base pretty quickly, and very much a do-everything guy that gives this defense a creative chess piece. And I'm not sure I've really looked at the Bills' defense under McDermott and felt like that's been something they've used much of, and so I'm kind of curious to see how this impacts the scheme moving forward.
How good is the Lorenzo Alexander comparison for you? I mean, there's a size difference there, I think, to start, right?
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, they're such unique players. I think you can appreciate how they both are very terrific athletes that were former linemen that now play in space and can do a lot of different things. But maybe there is a similar arc there. I don't mind invoking the name, but Lorenzo was such an asset as a leader, and maybe Michael Hoecht could be that as well. He certainly comes with rave reviews, and people talk highly of the leadership and the type of lunch pail guy that he is. But I think it's fair, although I don't want to get too crazy.
Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast, joining us. To Josh Palmer, who I know you're a big fan of this signing. You were, championing might be a little strong, Joe, but you like the player, you like the fit.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I took every chance that I could to talk about Josh Palmer as a player that I thought would be the type of investment that made sense to me for the Bills in free agency. I going through and studying all these options, and like the sirens were going off. It's like, this is kind of exactly the type of player that the Bills need, where, primarily an outside player. So no more of he's the best in the slot and you got too many slot options. Gives the Bills some size, 6'1", 210. And is a route runner. I mean, that's the thing, is this is a really, really good route runner. Doesn't tip his routes, very technical, smooth in and out of breaks. Just has a really good feel for being able to manipulate that corner and then get open. And, he can win on the horizontal plane, and he's just very, very savvy with the route running. And I thought that's what the Bills needed. They faced more man coverage than any team over the last 2 years, and they needed some receiver talent that can make teams pay for playing man coverage. And, not only does the film support that he's a good route runner, but the separation data from Fantasy Points Data Suite will tell you that this is like a top 10 player in terms of route win rate in the NFL. And so gets a good chance to play with Josh Allen. First 3 years of his career, he's behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and obviously they've had tight ends and Austin Eckler that they throw the ball to. And this past year, they become a run-heavy team, and Lad McConkey emerges, and Quentin Johnston's a first-round pick they're trying to get going. And the production's not going to turn anyone's head, but if you think about the skill set and what the Bills need and how he can fill the role as a 60 to 90 target guy, I really think he's the perfect type of fit and the type of investment that I thought was necessary at receiver.
To this idea about, like, some of Palmer's highlights are, vertical down the field, maybe not like the flat out burner, but I wonder, Joe, how you feel about Josh Allen. He just won the MVP. He does a million things right, but the deep ball disappearing from the Bills game, how much of that is the players they have, and how much is that Allen has not been all that efficient with that?
Well, they certainly tried. I mean, Josh Allen threw deep at the fifth highest rate of any quarterback in the NFL last season. So it was on the menu. It just wasn't very effective. And I think I've kind of gotten into this before, where just metrically, however you want to metrically evaluate vertical passing, whether it's EPA or passer rating, completion percentage over expectation. I mean, the numbers were terrible. I mean, it's talking about a bottom 5 vertical passing offense. And some of that is on Josh Allen. The catchable ball rate for Josh Allen on deep throws, 20 yards or more down the field, was 48.5% catchable ball rate. That's 26th in the NFL in terms of the 32 quarterbacks that had the most attempts. It's not where Josh Allen needs to live. And so, yeah, some of that's on Josh for ball placement, but also I think there is something to be said about the vertical receiving talent that he had last season, and the fact that there were so many new weapons around him, right? It's a low-efficiency play to begin with, and it's even more difficult when you don't have guys that are necessarily tailored for that role, combined with trying to get the chemistry down with that many new pieces. So I think it's a kind of a salad of all of that baked together, but it's definitely an area of this offense that I think needs to be better. That would be huge if it does happen, because Josh is always going to kind of search for some of those deep throws down the field. Like, even though it wasn't effective, like I said, 5th highest deep throw rate in the NFL. So Palmer's not going to just run by everybody. That's not what he's going to do. But he's very technical, and I saw a lot of plays where they're able to kind of get him isoed up one-on-one and off-man coverage, and he's really able to kind of manufacture that space and get those corners to really commit with driving on a break that might be a false step, and now all of a sudden he's got a little space to get down the field, and he's able to get loose. So he wins down the field in some different types of ways, but it's, if you're looking for him to run a straight line and get past everybody, that's not his game.
Do you have any draft ideas, draft crushes you can give me for this role? Because Mac Hollins out the door, and there's probably room for at least one more addition at receiver, and I would imagine they might look for that burner in the draft.
Well, Matthew Golden's the guy, right? If you want the vertical down the field, the route winner, stretch the field, it's Matthew Golden. And I think that dream ended at the Combine. It wasn't – before the Combine, he was mocked to the Bills at pick 30 and sometimes not even in the first round. And I was very surprised because he was like my first receiver draft crush of the year. My wide receiver one, like when I watched him several months ago, I fell in love with the player. I had him higher than Ted McMillan pretty comfortably, and I think people are coming around to that. And so with that dream over, I think my new guy is Jalen Knoll out of Iowa State, who gives that verticality, a lot of down-the-field production last year for Iowa State, return upside. If you're looking for explosive plays that can be run after the catch or throw the ball down the field because they can win vertically, that's kind of my new target, and wouldn't probably make sense for one of the Bills' second-round picks if they wanted to go that route.
With free agency kind of like it's kind of not wrapped up, but a lot of the big names, I should say, are the ones that are off the board. I just looked up Joe PFF's top remaining free agents. The top 3 are all former Bills. It's Cooper, Diggs, and Douglas, and 2 of which you wouldn't at all think about for the Bills. So is there a name that's still out there that isn't committed to a team yet that you're thinking about for them?
Well, when Dalvin Tomlinson gets released later today by the Browns, that's going to very quickly become the free agent that I hope the Bills sign as a nose tackle. But, I go to the corners, and, it feels like the options are interesting. Like Asante Samuel's the big name left. Is he a fit for the Bills? Man corner that is really good ball skills, really good coverage instincts, but lacks size and definitely has had warts as a tackler throughout his career. And so I wonder if that's really a path that the Bills would go. But there's some veterans out there like a Shaq Griffin, a Kello Witherspoon. That makes sense to me. Jonathan Jones is kind of a bring him in, compete with Kyer Elam and see what happens. Or, maybe this is kind of shaping up for the Bills to make an early pick at corner in the draft. But I guess for the Bills, it's definitely, can they get a corner and can they maybe convince Dalvin Tomlinson to come to Buffalo?
Calais Campbell here. Any idea? Any thought there? I mean, I saw his havoc rate's pretty high. He's an older guy, and I know we don't want the Bills to just go all in on all the old guys. And they've kind of patched it together on the defensive line. They almost have to leave some spots open for the draft picks they're going to use up there.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want Calais Campbell? I know he's older, and you're not asking him to come in and play 70% of the snaps, but. Well, I'm pretty low on the rookie season that Dwayne Carter had, and I didn't love him coming out of Duke. And I don't think he did anything last year that says to me that he should be uncompeted with to be the primary backup to Ed Oliver. And so if you get Calais Campbell to come in there and fill that 25-30% of snaps role on a modest deal, yeah, I think anyone should want to sign up for that.
Yeah. Tackle, though, like, especially what you just said about Dwayne Carter, there should be room for two more meaningful ads, right, at that position? Because even if they added, like, a Campbell, unless I'm, not remembering right what type of player he is, you're still going to need that Tomlinson-type nose tackle, bigger space eater, no?
100%, yeah. I think the Bills need to get a meaningful player at nose tackle to platoon with Daquan Jones, in addition to another player that gives rush upside to go with Oliver and Dwayne Carter. So, yes, I do think there is room for two more players that are going to get run. And I think kind of with that, as you look at Daquan Jones as maybe a guy that should be maybe a 40% of snaps player. So, yes, 100% with you that there's room for two more rostered players that are part of the mix on a weekly basis.
Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast and Locked On NFL Scouting.
Last one, Joe, non-Bills. The Justin Fields to the Jets and in the division addition. Do you feel like there's any chance that works?
I've always been a Justin Fields fan. I'm not going to lie. I loved him at Ohio State. Now, obviously, he hasn't really done much in the NFL that is inspiring, that he can be a consistent player in terms of the throwing piece and running the offense. But, it's not a big investment for the Jets. It's 2 years, $40 million, which is really not much for a starting quarterback. So I think there's still options on the table, but I think he's going to have a chance to start for them. And, we've seen this rehab stuff happening with quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, it literally happened. And, I think it's a worthwhile swing for the Jets at pick number 7. They're kind of on the outside looking in for, the Cam Ward, if that's the guy they like. That feels like the opinions on Shedeur Sanders are going to be all over the place. Are they a Jackson Dart team? Is that the range that he's going to go? So it feels like a worthwhile swing. If I'm the Jets, I'd rather do that than Russell Wilson or, give all. Obviously, Sam Darnold's not going to the Jets, so they didn't have a lot of options. So I think it's a worthwhile swing, and obviously he gives you a physical upside and can run around a little bit, and so I think he's a decent floor, but certainly doesn't give them their long-term answer unless he proves otherwise.
Very good. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast. And also, Joe, tell everyone how they can sign up for your text club. I'm in your text club. I'm getting your breakdowns when the Bills sign somebody. So, you got Locked On Bills, you got Locked On NFL Scouting. What about the text club?
Yeah, appreciate that. We have a subtext community. If you go to any podcast that I do, there's a link in the show notes where you can become part of the different community-oriented things that I've done around the podcast, which does include a text club where I send out, messages to listeners about Bills news as it breaks and give you my first reaction, and you get into our Discord channel. And I also have a Substack where I kind of supplement the conversations that I have on the podcast with articles and film breakdowns. So a lot of different things that I have going on. Appreciate the chance to shout that out, and you can check it out. There's a link in the show notes for any podcast that I do.
Very good. Thanks, Joe.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast.